President Obama yesterday vowed to move forward during his second term in office that officially started yesterday. Borrowing words from Abraham Lincoln during yesterday's speech, he said this.
Through blood drawn by lash and blood drawn by sword, we learned that no union founded on the principles of liberty and equality could survive half slave and half free. We made ourselves anew and vowed to move forward together.
But President Obama and President Lincoln had very different views of that pesky thing called the Constitution. Here to explain is Fox News senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano. We heard a lot. We heard the beginning of the Constitution 5 times yesterday.
We the people, yeah. You know, if you like the president, if you believe in his vision of a federal government that can right any wrong and regulate any behavior and make everybody equal, then you celebrated the speech yesterday.
Sure.
But if you, like I think you and I, and probably most people watching us, believe that the Constitution not only constitutes, not only creates the government, it restrains the government.
Absolutely.
Then you didn't like what you heard yesterday. Yesterday was a very broad, expansive view of government. We can do this, we can do that. We can make schools safe, we can make the environment clean, we can get rid of the bad guys, we can make poor people rich. But nothing in there about freedom, about areas of human behavior immune from government interference. That's the whole theory behind the Constitution. That's why it's lasted for 230 years. Now, not every president likes it, and for many of them, it's an obstacle, and they find ways to get around it. It seems to be getting worse each time. This president is the champion at trying to get around the Constitution, including writing executive orders to do things that the Congress has declined to do.
Right, and Congress is already going to challenge him on that as soon as they can. We just got an email from James. He heard what we were promoting segment-wise for you, and he said, hey, Judge, the Constitution was written 250 years ago in a different age. Should it remain unchanged forever?
Well, James, in fact, as you probably know, it's been amended 28 times. And an amendment requires 2/3 of the Congress and 3/4 of the state legislatures to concur, meaning a grand national consensus to either change something huge, like get rid of slavery, or tweak it, like how many terms can the president serve. But it is the supreme law of the land. It is the basis for the government, and everybody in government, from a public school custodian to the president, swears an oath to uphold, protect, and defend it. Do they do that, or do they find ways around it? It depends on which side of the aisle you're on. I suggest to you that this president will try to find ways around it.
Well, let's see. Today is the official first full day of his second term.
What surprises are in store?
Yeah, there could be a bunch. Maybe not, though. All right.
All right.
Judge, thank you very much.
Pleasure, Stevie. Thank you.
Hey, things got heated during Hillary Clinton's exchange with Senator Ron Johnson yesterday of Wisconsin on the cause of those terror attacks in Benghazi.
We were misled that there were supposedly protests and then something sprang out of that, an assault sprang out of that. And that was easily ascertained that was not the fact. And the American people could have known that within days, and they didn't know that.
With all due respect, the fact is we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make? It is our job to figure out what happened and do everything we can to prevent it from ever happening again.
I'm joined by Fox News judicial senior analyst, Judge Napolitano. Judge, I find so much wrong with her remarks.
Yeah, well, her remarks
in that case
at first level were callous, arrogant, and uncaring. But if you analyze a little deeper at her remarks, what is missing? Her job is to tell the truth. First of all, she's under oath. Secondly, someone who works for her, Susan Rice, the ambassador to the UN, went all over television, including with our own colleague Chris Wallace, and blatantly misrepresented the truth. I don't know if she lied, because I don't know if she knew that she was misrepresenting. Mrs. Clinton, the State Department, and the Obama administration don't care about the truth. For her to say, what difference does it make? The difference, whether it was a disorganized mob or an assault on that compound, and whether or not the truth was told, is of profound interest to the American people.
Your former job was getting to the truth.
Yes.
It's amazing. People are focused on the fact that she lost her temper, but they're not looking at the words in which she said. What difference does it make? The whole reason why we're there is because we don't know what happened still today.
You know, her losing her temper either wasn't a lost temper, it was either planned or it was controlled. And it served as a to use one of your phrases, a brushback pitch, Brian. I mean, the Republicans did not examine her with enough aggression, with enough professionalism. They should have zeroed in with follow-up questions. They should have cross-examined her as if she was on the witness stand. The Democrats, as Bill O'Reilly said last night, not a single Democrat asked a single question that made any sense or that challenged her.
Here are at least direct statements. Tell me what you think of this from Senator McCain and Senator Rand Paul.
I categorically reject your answer to Senator Johnson about, well, we didn't ask these survivors who were flown to Ramstein the next day that this was not a spontaneous demonstration. To say that it's because an investigation was going on?
Had I been president at the time and I found that you did not read the cables from Benghazi, you did not read the cables from Ambassador Stevens, I would have relieved you of your post. I think it's inexcusable.
Those were two of the best statements made, along with Senator Johnson's question. What did she do with the statement from Senator McCain and the statement from Senator Paul? She didn't reply at all. And then they went on to the next question.
But her answer was interesting, and it was very easy. It took her 4 months. She had the answer. Her answer was, everything's addressed to me that comes into the State Department.
Right.
But I don't see every cable. It's not possible.
Right. It's too much for me to read. You know what? It's her job to know things. It's her job to execute properly. And it is her job to tell the truth and for the people who work for her to tell the truth. Does she really think we believe that someone who works for her, Susan Rice, was chosen by someone unknown to her to go on national television, and someone also unknown to her gave Susan Rice untruthful statements to make, and she blindly made them? Does anybody really accept that? Does Mrs. Clinton think we will believe that?
Right.
Mrs. Clinton was under oath.
Right. And by the way, Chris Wallace's feelings must be hurt because she said, I don't really like doing the Sunday show.
Right.
That's too bad. That's too bad. Yeah, you just pick and choose what you like to do. Judge, always good to see you.
Wallace had a problem with her husband, not with her.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You sit there with that little smirk on your
face.
We remember that. All right, so Chris Wallace, we salute you. Judge, good job.
Not enough evidence. Let's talk to the judge. Judge Andrew Napolitano is here. He's our senior judicial analyst here at Fox News. You know, at the time, he said there wasn't enough evidence to prove anything. Well, usually the way this works is a grand jury, if it chooses to indict, then the prosecutors roll the dice, put it before a jury of your peers, bring all the evidence out you have it, let the jury decide.
Right, right. You know, this is a real head scratcher, and as we were talking during the break, Shep, I have not seen this in my career. Maybe this will happen in my personal career. Maybe this will happen once in a lifetime. That's how unusual it is, that a grand jury will indict someone for a crime involving death, a form of homicide, and the prosecutor will not prosecute. Normally, the prosecutor would not present evidence to the grand jury unless the prosecutor really believed that the people against whom the evidence was presented committed the crime and that the prosecutor had enough evidence with which to obtain a conviction. You just wouldn't go to a grand jury with anything less than that. Now, he was under tremendous political pressure at the time. You remember that. I remember it. We all, those of us who covered it, do.
I feel like I lived in Boulder for a while.
Right. He may very well have just thrown all the evidence to the grand jury and said, you guys decide, hoping they would not indict so he could use that as an excuse and politically move on with the rest of the work in his office and with his career. Instead, he got an indictment, didn't follow up on it, and he has the discretion not to follow up on it. I'm not suggesting he did anything wrong. It's a tremendous act of political and moral courage to say to a grand jury, you indicted, I'm not good enough for me, I'm not going to prosecute.
Well, that's how John Ramsey saw it. But I think that some who covered this case and others who watched it in the Boulder area and beyond would say John Ramsey is a very powerful man in that community, with a lot of ties in that community, that it's possible that the evidence, you couldn't tell exactly what happened for the evidence, but one of the theories was something bad happened to this child. Somebody covered it up.
Yes.
And the fear was that somebody might go to prison for something that didn't exactly happen the way they said. But whatever it was, you would think that justice would be able to play itself out.
Well, there's never been justice in this case. One of the grand jurors themselves, I don't know, male or female, broke the law by revealing what went on in the grand jury.
Can't believe it took this long.
And said, we don't know who did what, but we know they should have done something. Quite frankly, that's not enough on which to base an indictment. We don't know who did what, but somebody should have done something. On the other hand, we haven't seen the indictment. We probably never will. We haven't seen the transcript of what evidence was presented to the grand jury and what their deliberations were. We probably never will. It is presumably a valid indictment that the DA told us decided not to reveal to anybody, still not saying whether or not it ever existed. But one of his assistants said, former assistants, yes, it did exist. So it is a bizarre set of circumstances. Usually it's the other way around. Usually a DA is pushing a grand jury for an indictment, and they're resisting, rather than what happened in this case.
Yeah, this was an unusual case, local weirdness, and what a period in our lives.
Maybe there's another surprise coming, Chef.
Remember those news conferences, and the Ramsey would shuttle people in and out.
Yes.
They coddled up to some reporters and wouldn't let anybody else in. The secrecy and the...
Yeah, some nut job confessed to this a few years ago. They locked him up for a week, and then they realized the confession was absurd, and they let him go. This case just keeps going on and on and on.
Unbelievable. Judge, thank you.
You're welcome.
Last week, Chicago Mayor and former Chief of Staff to President Obama, Rahm Emanuel, sent an open letter to several big banks, pressuring them to cut off funds to firearm companies that don't actively get behind President Obama's gun control efforts. He says, get on board, or these companies need to get on board, or Bank of America, TD Bank, and others should just cut them off. Today, a response from Texas Senator Ted Cruz. He has just sent a letter to the CEOs of several gun manufacturers and to the banks. The letter is full of fiery language. He writes in part, quote, should Mayor Emanuel's bullying campaign prove successful, I am confident that there are numerous financial institutions in Texas that would be eager to earn your business. And in the event that it might prove helpful, I would be happy to personally introduce you to their leaders. Well, Mayor Emanuel is not the only politician now getting attention for using high-pressure, strong-arm tactics in this gun debate that was supposed to involve a modest proposal that both sides could potentially agree upon. Meet Bill de Blasio. He's here in New York City. He's the man who wants to be the next mayor of New York. And he has been attacking investment firms here that have any dealings with the gun industry. If they invest in the gun industry, they're on his list. But can lawmakers legally appeal to banks and investors to cut off cash flow, to hurt businesses, simply to win a political argument, or because those gun manufacturers won't get on board with their political argument? Judge Andrew Napolitano is a Fox News senior judicial analyst. Judge, welcome back. I mean, I'll tell you, as somebody who practiced law for almost a decade, this is scary to me when you've got somebody who's got the power of government behind them, threatening private industry to cut off relationships with law-abiding entities. It is not like these people have committed any violation of law, even allegedly. They are following the law. It's just that Rahm Emanuel and this Bill de Blasio don't like their chosen business. So you've got the power of the government pressuring them to sever these relationships. My question to you is it even legal?
Well, the answer in a word is no, it's not legal, Megan, and there are a couple of clauses of the Constitution, some well-known, some not so well-known, that were written to prohibit this. One of the clauses is called the Contracts Clause, and it basically says that state governments or city or municipal governments that are formed in the states cannot interfere with contracts that are freely entered into, that were lawful at the time they were made. So because it is still lawful for gun manufacturers to manufacture guns, and it is still lawful for banks to lend money to the gun manufacturers, and still lawful for hedge funds to invest in gun manufacturers, it is unlawful for the government to interfere with that relationship. Now, this is not Rahm Emanuel as a private citizen.
That's right. That would be different.
Right, saying, I don't like what you're doing with your investment, so I'm going to take my investment out of yours. This is the mayor of the city's second largest city, of the country's second largest city, threatening to use the coercive power of the government to punish these corporations if they don't invest money as he wants them to, and, this brings us to another clause of the Constitution, if they don't speak out the way he wants them to speak.
That's the thing. That's where I want to go with this, because I realize, and there's another thing separate and apart from the Constitution, a civil claim called tortious interference with contract that he might be guilty of violating. I mean, you can't interfere with somebody's contractual relationship like that. But let me ask you about First Amendment speech, because viewpoint discrimination is not allowed. When you have the federal government trying to say, you don't think like I think, I'm going to punish you.
Right.
That's not okay. Can Rahm Emanuel try to punish these gun manufacturers? Because what they say he's trying to punish them for is for not advocating the president's proposal. They don't see eye to eye with him on it, so he wants them punished.
Well, the First Amendment, and most school children can quote the words from it, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. The word Congress, since the Civil War and the Civil War amendments, means no government can make any law abridging the freedom of speech. The corollary of that is no government can force you to speak. You have a right to remain silent. You also have a right to speak out as you see fit. So for the government, the city of Chicago under Rahm Emanuel, or the city of New York if Bill de Blasio becomes mayor, to punish investment houses and banks and manufacturers because they don't say what these politicians want them to say is a blatant and direct violation of First Amendment rights, which are enjoyed by individuals, by investors, by corporations, by everybody and everything in the United States.
You think about how dangerous this is. Think if you had some very pro-life politician who is running around to apartment complexes saying, I'm not saying you can't rent to a woman who's had an abortion, but I'm going to give you the list of all the women who have visited Planned Parenthood on the days they provide abortions. And I strongly encourage you to reconsider doing business with women who have had abortions as the public official, as the mayor of Chicago. I strongly encourage it. I mean, can you imagine the outrage in this country, Judge?
Well, the left, of which Councilman de Blasio and Mayor Emanuel are prime examples, is only too willing to use the power of the government to enforce conformity with their wishes. They are no more interested in freedom than they are in jumping over the moon. They're interested in an end result, and they almost don't care how they get there. But your point is a great one. They don't realize that the power that they use today against law-abiding citizens who don't speak as they want them to speak could be used 5 years from now against law-abiding citizens who agree with them to force them to do things and say things that they don't believe in. This is why these clauses were written in the Constitution, to guarantee an area of human behavior, thought, speech, silence, commercial activity that should be immune from government interference and government bullying.
And because we know there is a difference between a private citizen speaking his or her mind and the power of someone who holds the office like Chicago mayor or potentially New York mayor doing it. They have a lot more authority and a lot more power to bully. That needs to be checked. Judge, thanks for being here.
Pleasure, Megan.
A potential scandal involving a U.S. senator is heating up in a big way after a late-night raid of a doctor's office in South Florida. That doctor, a friend and donor of the Democratic New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez. FBI agents spent hours removing evidence from that doctor's office in West Palm. The reason really isn't officially clear, whether it's related to unpaid taxes or accusations the doctor gave improper benefits to the senator. Just minutes ago, Senator Menendez's office acknowledged that he did indeed travel on the doctor's private plane, but staffers insist that those trips were legal. Again, staffers insist those trips were legal. That doctor's name first came up in a report from a conservative website, The Daily Caller, back in November. It published an interview with hookers in the Dominican Republic who claimed Senator Menendez paid them for sex at the doctor's mansion in the Dominican Republic. The senator strongly denies those claims. Last night's raid also came just hours after a man in New Jersey pleaded guilty to giving the senator's campaign some $20,000 in illegal donations. The senator's office reports it gave that money to charity. Let's sort it all out with a judge. Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano is with us now. Once served on the New Jersey Superior Court as well. It looks like a lot of stuff piling up on Bob Menendez.
Well, it does look like a lot is piling up on the senator, and the laws are a little dicey. It is unlawful under U.S. federal law to travel to another country to have sex with someone under the age of 18, even if the sexual encounter there is lawful. Prostitution is lawful in the Dominican Republic, not with children under the age of 16. So age here is very important. Although, as you pointed out, Shep, the senator denies that he patronized prostitutes without even getting into the issue of their age. The other interesting things here are the travel on this plastic surgeon's private jet, which apparently occurred many times. The senator has visited this hotel 20 times in 2 years, the same hotel, a five-star resort. The resort is owned by two sugar barons, two brothers. They grow many, many acres of sugar. Question: did the gifts from the plastic surgeon or the sugar barons influence any of the senator's votes? He did vote on sugar price supports. Maybe he was going to vote for the sugar price supports anyway. The other interesting thing is the involvement of the FBI. Now, the FBI could be looking at independent criminal behavior on the part of the physician who provided the air flights, or he could be looking at the senator. We don't know.
Wow. This one will go fast, I bet you.
I think it will. He could be removed from the Senate even if he's not convicted of a crime, because it's a lot of evidence to be convicted of a crime, very little evidence to be kicked out of the Senate for behavior embarrassing to the rest of the Senate.
We'll wait for the facts. Judge Napolitano, thank you.
Sure.